gewoon even zo doen. En dan deze is, hoop ik, ja, deze pakt nu gewoon.
En beweegt hem niet even.
Ja, maar hij pakt hem niet in de mixer om een of andere reden. Ik weet niet waarom dat hem niet in de mixer pakt. Oh, echt waar, dat vind ik echt zo stresserend, deze shit, hè. Oké, dus hier staat overal. Ja, ik heb die gewoon even ge-unmute nu, dus nu heb ik gewoon altijd audio.
Zo, het is...
Hello, is everybody here now? Or are we still waiting for people to come from the room? Okay, we'll wait for a second then. Okay, we are good, so let's start. Welcome everybody. Welcome after our, it feels like very, very long summer break. I'm very happy that we're back. Welcome at THEO Technologies. Thank you for hosting us again. I kind of want to start with this one because there's almost 830 people in the meetup group now, and about half of each meetup that we do is new people that have never joined a meetup before. So that's actually really exciting because that means that this meetup group keeps going. More people are getting interested in Flutter and what the framework is about and want to learn more about it. So that's reason to be happy, I think. That also merits the following slide, which is a quick introduction of what is Flutter Belgium actually. And fun fact is that Flutter Belgium was actually born in this building in 2018. The very first Flutter Belgium Meetup was also here, not in the auditorium because there weren't enough people, I think. We did it upstairs in the office. But what we aim to do is to create a welcoming community where everybody interested in the Flutter framework can come to learn and get inspired. And by that, we really mean everybody. And we've been doing that since 2018 in this building. Who is Flutter Belgium? Flutter Belgium is me. There's also Chris sitting over there and Koen currently managing the live stream for the controls. If you have any questions about Flutter Belgium, reach out to us. We're always available on the Flutter Belgium Slack channel. You can also join us on that Slack channel. There's a link to the Flutter Belgium website, which also contains the links to the various platforms that we're on. There's Slack, there's the meetup group, which you're obviously already a part of, but we're also on LinkedIn, and all of the talks that are given during the meetups are also available on YouTube. They're being recorded, they're being live streamed as well for the people that can join, but they're also available later if you want to re-watch something or check some fact that you heard but don't remember precisely. Not really an update, but we have an app. We have a Flutter Belgium app. Koen made that one. Later on, we have, I think we can call it a tradition now. We've done it enough times, I think. We do a raffle and you can use the app to join the raffle. We have, I think, a Dash plushie to give away and some t-shirts today. So if you want to make have a chance of winning those, download the app already and then you can scan later. This is an important slide. I really, really, really believe that everybody has something useful to say when it comes to whatever you do in your daily work with Flutter. And we really want to hear you talk about it. So if you have anything that you've done, a problem that you've tackled, a package that you worked with, or maybe a package that you created, or something that you did, come talk about it. Reach out to on the Slack to Koen, Chris, or myself. We're always looking for speakers. We never have enough speakers. And you will get a really nice, exclusive, shiny Flutter Belgium You Did It sticker, which are very cool. If you have never spoken before and you just want to kind of try it out, we have this format that we do in the beginning of the meetups where we do lightning talks. They're very short, 5 to 10 minute talks about something that you've encountered. Maybe that's a good in for you to sort of get acquainted with speaking in public. And then maybe you can do a longer talk later if that's what you want to do. If you want to step in with a full talk straight away, go ahead. We're always looking. On that same page, we're also always looking for hosts to host the meetup. We would be nothing without the companies hosting us in their wonderful venues. So if you work at a company and are interested in hosting a Flutter Belgium meetup, do reach out as well. It's very simple what the requirements are. You can always reach out and then we give you what the requirements are, and then you can still decide whether or not you want to host with your company. Tonight, we have 3 lightning talks. We have Frey, Romain, and Brent giving lightning talks, and then we have 2 full talks. We always have 2 full talks. We have Daniel from THEO Technologies who will talk about video, and then our very own Koen will also give a talk about Dart CLIs. This is the QR code that you want to scan if you want to join the raffle. I'll wait a second for everybody to scan. Yeah, it's also on the, if you don't have a chance to scan it right now, the QR code on our roll-up banners is also the link to the raffle right now. So if you're, I'll wait for another second and then continue. If right before the raffle you still decide that you want to join, then just quickly scan the QR code here. Then, very importantly, thank you to THEO Technologies for hosting us today, for the food and the really wonderful venue. I think this is the most lush venue we've been in so far, so that's pretty cool. And then I think there's one more thing to say, which is the next meetup. We haven't even started this one yet, but just a quick reminder, we do this quite often, is in November at Lemon Companies in Contig. Do join that one. I think we will be releasing a few more meetups on the meetup page in one batch later, I think all the way up to January next year, and then we're still looking for hosts and speakers, so do reach out to us. That's not yet relevant. So without further ado, I think we can jump into the lightning talks. And Romain, you are going to start? Frey is going to start. Okay, excellent. Switch this one. Ah, Brent is going to start. Okay. Okay. That's for you.
Oh, hello. Can everybody hear me? So my name is Brent and I work at ACA. We're a company based in Hasselt, Antwerp, Ghent, and also a small office at Leuven. And today I prepared a small lightning talk about using WebPay. Actually, the title was quite large, but like 5 minutes before the talk we shortened it up because that's actually what this will be about, use WebPay. But first, we're going to take a step back. So what's also important besides the image format is also that you need to use the correct size that your image will be rendered at. Because if you decode your image to a size that's like 3 times as much as necessary, it's going to negatively reflect your app performance. So that's why you can use the cache width or the cache height property It's available on the image class, or example, image.asset and image.network. Also make sure that you watch your device pixel ratio, because sometimes, for instance, your iPhone mostly nowadays has a pixel ratio of 3. Some other devices have a pixel ratio of 2. You need to take that into account to calculate the correct cache width and cache height parameters. You can also do it in a different way. You also have the resize image, which instead of a cache width and a cache height parameter has a width and a height parameter, but it basically does the same thing. Now, what is actually hard about that is how are you going to identify this? Fortunately, there is a property available. You can just enable it, for instance, in your main class. I mostly wrap it in a kdebug just to be sure. And it's debug invert oversized images. And what this will actually do is the following. So on the left side, you see a small colibri. It's a reference to Dash as well. I saw it myself in Costa Rica, by the way. But what it will basically do is just invert it, both in colors and upside down, to make it visible to you that that image is being rendered at an incorrect size. As well, in your logging, you will see how much data actually it requires more than when you would have it in the good way. On the right side, I have fixed that using the cache width parameters and the cache height parameter. And as you can see now, my colibri is right again. And now we're going to the main topic actually, and that's using the right image format. I think everybody knows that there are different image formats. Mostly known are JPEG and PNG. Those are the first two here. PNG, this is actually the best one for images requiring lossless compression and transparency. It provides actually faster rendering than JPEG, I will explain later, but it's basically because it has lossless compression. It has a larger file size overall than JPEG when you have a normal image. What it is also good for is for logos, because when you have a PNG image where most of the image has the same color or transparent, it actually is more, less file size than the JPEG file. JPEG is actually best used for photographs and detailed images, but it has lossy compression. So it's less detailed, but it's often better to use because PNGs, they grow to an enormous file size. I will show it to you later where I have the same image in the 3 different file formats to show you how much the difference actually is. But the downside to JPEG is that it's also slower to render. Not because it's smaller, it should be faster, but that's not the case. But because it needs to be decompressed and that whole process needs to happen on your phone, it actually becomes slower. It also doesn't have any transparency, so losing that part as well. And then last, we have WebP. That's actually the best way to go forward. It's a modern format that supports both lossy and lossless compression with transparency. It actually combines the two, and it results in a smaller file size that also renders faster. I didn't go in too deep because I'm not any scientist. I do not know at all what down at the bottom the difference is or how it gets calculated, but it is the best one to use for all your web and mobile applications. The only downside that is present is that it has limited support. Most common day browsers support it in both Android and iOS. iOS a while back didn't support it, but right now it's totally fine to use it. So this is the impact of the download size. On the top you see a placeholder that just has 2000x 1500 in there, but most of the pixels are just gray. There you can see what I meant earlier. You have a JPEG with 49 kilobytes, a PNG which is actually smaller of 16 kilobytes, and a WebP image of 6 kilobytes. The image below is the one that you saw earlier as well. It has 1.3 megabytes for the JPEG image and 12.6 for the PNG. So that's what I meant with it can increase enormously. And then lastly, you have the WebP file format, which is actually the smallest download size with 330 kilobytes. So why is this important? It's mostly important for your network images. Also the ones you ship with your app because you want to decrease the download size, but especially for the images that you download from your API. If you have an image-heavy application, for instance, we have an IMO application where you download a lot of images, it can have a difference on the performance, also on the network performance when the Wi-Fi is bad or there's only like a 3G connection. This is also related to the performance. I wanted to do a demo, but it actually failed for some reason. What actually failed was that I cannot always reproduce this same difference between the three file formats. A lot of times it actually is closer. You can still see slightly that there is a difference in WebP. You can actually feel it a bit, but the difference is not always this much. But this was done in a test application where there was also a platform view, a map running in the background, which can, of course, explain a bit the difference. But here you see the results that I had when testing it, and you can clearly see that WebP was, like a big win for our performance. So that was actually my talk. So if you have any questions or want to talk about it later, please go ahead. If you're ready.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm going to be honest, I didn't really prepare a talk like the guy just before. It's more going to be about a discussion. I'm going to present the work I'm doing currently, and I've been doing for the past 2 years. Yeah, let's go. So, who am I? I started Flutter 3 years ago. I've been working on a framework on top of it that accelerates the kickstart of projects. I'm going to come back to it later. I launched my own agency last year. In the first place, it was going to be, it's good, okay. It was going to be a startup studio, but it ended up being an agency, so I didn't like it very much anymore. So I quit several months ago to completely focus on the tech. So, what is this about? Is everyone familiar here with Mason? From Felix Angloff? Yes? So just for those who aren't, it's something that allows you to quickly template some files. And so what I did is that I implemented different services of mobile apps into distinct bricks of Mason. And I implemented my own Dart CLI on top of it so that it glues different blocks together. So basically I have one big project, initial project with a design system, with the architecture and everything needed. And then I have currently 32 blocks that can be integrated with that initial template. So currently it supports Stripe, AdMob, RevenueCat, Mixpanel, Branch.io. And something important is that it's domain-driven design. So if you want to change, for example, the analytics to another provider, it would be fairly easy, actually. I have a CLI, so you can just the CLI is called whale. You can just type whale add block. You type the name of the block. And what it does in the background is here. So every block comes with a screen template. Those are just widgets that allow to interact with the service easily. And it automates also the update of the packages, the assets, the routes, and all the localization required for that service. And then I have a system that allows to effectively handle environment variables. Yeah, you will understand it in the demo right after. I also have a part that automates the native files. So if in the info.plist you need to make some modification, everything is done automatically. So let's start the demo. So currently the framework allows me to start a new project in under 20 minutes from nothing to posted on the stores. And yeah, something important is it's meant to be professional in the sense that we have a clear separation of development, production, and everything required for professional mobile app development. So the demo here is 45 minutes long. I'm not going to show everything, but let's go fast forward. So this is how it starts. It automates also the creation of Firebase projects. So currently it's supported by Firebase. Ideally, I would like to implement also Supabase connections, but it's not the case yet. So yeah, first you need to relog in with the Firebase, so it will be able to create the projects. I'm going to fast forward. Oops. Okay. This is how it works. First, it asks you for the name of the project you want to build. Then you can, Then you can connect it to a GitHub account for sure, so that we can later automate via CodeMagic the deployment on the stores. If you have any question, by the way, don't hesitate to interrupt me. I prefer to have a conversation that's just me talking, but yeah. So here, that's the important part. It asks you every block that you want to build and add in your project. And then behind the scenes is going to happen what I said just before. I have also a widget book integration so that you can directly see the different components of every service in a widget book. Every block comes with some parameters. For example, here's an example for the user profile. It asks you if you want to add the nationality, a picture, or an avatar for the users. Here is where it connects to Firebase. It checks all the projects that I have to make sure that there is no duplicate in the naming convention. Then you can select your own naming for sure. Fast forward. So yeah, some additional steps are required for Firebase. As you probably know, we need to first allow Google authentication. Otherwise, you need to re-download the Google service files. So that needs to be made first. Okay. It automates, of course, the update of the icons, the splash screen, automatically. And there are commands in the CLI that allows you to quickly regenerate everything. Wait, it's starting to get long, but pop. So this is all the Firebase setup. Notifications are, of course, included. So it's really fast to just create an APN key and input it in the system. Wait, I'm going to do like so. So the CodeMagic, I don't know if people are using CodeMagic here, but basically the sensitive files, like for example the credentials of Firebase, you won't put it in the GitHub, of course. This is why you need to mention them directly on GitHub. And I've implemented a system where it automatically checks for updates on the files and send it via the CodeMagic API directly when you do some modifications. So we're sure the connection is right. Here is an example of all the environment variables that you can input in the system. As we can see here, there is branch.io also for deep linking. And revenue cut also for subscriptions. Let's fast forward again. And it's almost done, the demo. So yeah, CodeMagic automatically updates, puts your bundle on the store. And I'm gonna actually really fast forward. But in the end, so here I worked for 22 minutes, almost, a bit more. And I have an app. I did it just before coming here, as you can see the date. It was literally an hour ago. And I already have the app on my phone. I could show you, but my phone is there. Okay, so let's continue. What is the vision of this project? Where is it going? Initially, I wanted to build a system. So I've been studying artificial intelligence in university, and I would like to combine both. So the idea would be to create some sort of text-to-mobile app, SaaS, where everything gets automated. Currently, AI is not ready to do it. This was a quick demo. I did a demo. It's not a demo, it's a fake demo. You all recognized Cloud for sure. But here is how it would be, how it would occur. You would simply ask some requests via chat interactions, and it would directly update the mobile app next to it. So, as the title says, this is unreasonable. Currently, AI is not capable of doing this. Maybe with big factories with the LangChain or LangGraph, it would be feasible, and that's the current thing I'm working on right now. But on the short term, what I would like to do, first of all, is make all this system open source. Then provide a course to really understand how the code base works. I hope I could motivate the community to use that, because you're able to build apps that you can sell for between 10K and 20K in a week. So yeah, you can earn a lot of money with it, as a freelancer, I mean. And so I would like to create a platform where we put in relation some freelancers using the tech with some customers that want that have some requests. And the good thing about this is that two freelancers, I mean, you can take one freelancer, then another one, and since the code base is always identical, it's easy to understand everything. And so actually, clients would be hiring freelancers for several days of work on the basis based on what they need. Based on this chat interaction and the modification that the freelancers do on the code base, I could be able to train the model to, in the end, automate those changes. I think that's it. Yeah, thank you very much. For your attention. So the idea would be that this is a really good question, because the idea of making open source is quite recent. But I think if I want to be able to compete against Flutterflow and things that are really good, because Flutterflow is really good actually, I have to go open source and create a community. So the tool would be free for anyone that would use it. But to go through this platform with the community, I would monetize and take probably a margin on the transaction that occurred there.
Maybe ask money for the App Store publishing module?
Yeah, we could talk about after it. I would love to diversify the revenue sources for sure. Yes.
What is the timeline for making it public to use?
So actually, today was the first time I did from A to Z, really starting the project until publishing it. I've been working on this for almost 2 years, but I had some adventures with agencies where I lost time. But I plan to do it in the coming months, so in 1 or 2 months from now. And the ultimate goal is to join Y Combinator in July this year with a product that could be scaled internationally. But I mean, I'm gonna try it. It's difficult.
Exciting year.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Which AI are you using?
Which AI? So currently I'm trying to build a factory with LangGraph. LangGraph is a Python framework that allows to create agents that communicate with one another. And so basically how it would work is when you ask a request of changes, you would have first an AI that checks which files need to be modified. You create a RAG of this, and then well, you automate via probably ChatGPT or Claude or something. But right now with Cursor that exists, basically it already works. So right now I could just create an entire app with Cursor really easily, because if you don't know it, Cursor works is really effective when the code base is already huge, because he knows how to code basically. And with my system, a general code base is like 150,000 lines of code, so there is a lot of material from which Cursor can find inspiration. So I hesitated at some point to build actually a wrapper around Cursor on a server that would translate requests into, client requests into Cursor requests. But I've been chatting with some people that know way more about this than me, that say that it's going to be really difficult to create a wrapper around Cursor, because I would be dependent on their technology improvements. So basically it doesn't work yet. So I'm open to have some ideas if you have some. All right, thank you very much.
All right. Let's see, let's connect. Hopefully that works. Okay. Awesome. Today I just want to take up a few minutes of your time to talk about a thing that I call sub-packages. There can also be considered lightweight packages or something. It is actually an opinionated approach that I mostly use for organizing Dart code bases that might evolve to larger levels. And it's something that I want to talk about just to start as a discussion starter. We can talk about it later, or maybe have a few questions as well. I'm going to start off with an example. We all know that our code bases, our files, our widgets in Flutter, they can tend to grow quite large. And of course, at certain points, we start to split things up. It's a good practice to split things up into separate widgets. But we can go from separate widgets to separate files, to separate packages, and so on. Mostly, we start from the top. We'll just create some private widgets first. We're not gonna over-architect anything to get started. We'll just start very simple. So let's go through that first step real quick. So if you have a big widget, you can just chop it up into smaller private widgets, because then you don't have to expose these widgets to the rest of your code base. No other pieces of your code will import those and interact with those when that was actually unintended. But at a certain point, this file can start to become very large as well. It's going to get hard to search for things, so we tend to move it into multiple files. Very simply put, we just have several widget files, and they import widgets from each other. Now, because we did this, we actually are kind of forced to make those widgets publicly, and so they're not private to our code base anymore. So what could happen is that other pieces of the code base that in this example doesn't have anything to do with the dashboard can actually use those widgets that were considered private as well. Well, that's not actually intended usage. So that's where sub-packages come in. This approach will allow you to actually have a directory with a source folder inside of that where we keep all the widgets, and then we have what is considered a barrel file. I don't know who heard that term before. I think some of you might have heard that. It's actually what we import a lot when we use other packages as well. And you see this naming convention where we have the name of the directory and then the same name as a Dart file as well. Now, what this barrel file exactly is basically just kind of like a guard for that directory, which will only export the classes that we intend other pieces of the code to interact with. So by using that, we can just import it like this example. Just import the barrel file and you'll get all of the classes that you intend to let the rest of your code base interact with. Now, the other thing that we saw was the source directory in there. Actually, the source directory simply acts as a barrier between internal classes of your subpackage and external classes. So internally, you can just have relative imports, so you don't need to pass the source directory. So the golden rule for these subpackages is just to simply avoid importing anything that contains source. And it's a simple rule that just protects unintended usage of certain widgets in our code base. Of course, it's still possible. You can still just import source. I made a little linting rule that will help with that. It will basically detect whenever you're importing anything that is considered source within your same project. And it will also give you quick fixes to help that. So this might be something that you can use if you want to try the approach of sub-packages. Now, what are the advantages to these sub-packages? They're just really easy to set up and maintain. We don't have to create separate packages from the get-go. We can later evolve them into larger separate packages, but it's just easy to get started. It avoids unintended usage, as I explained. And with this lint rule, you can also make sure that it enforces not to break this rule in your CI/CD pipelines. As I mentioned later on, because we're already bundling everything and we're using that barrel file to interact with everything within that directory, it's super easy just to take it and put it as a separate package afterwards in a mono repo or whatever you like to do with it. And it still stays flexible. If you just have a separate package, you cannot always easily interact with everything, or you cannot override this rule, but just by using this, you can still kind of find a middle ground in there. You can still easily have write tests in the rest of your project for it without looking at those import rules. So that's basically an approach that I tend to use for most of my projects. I don't know if we have a bit of time for questions, if anybody has some. If not, you can always reach me as well.
Is there a reason when you would still use a single file with private widgets then?
If it's just a very small file, it's going to be easier if you just want to have a simple widget tree. If you don't want to repeat yourself, you can have like separate widgets within the same file. I imagine like if your file would be, let's say, less than 100 lines, I think it can become very bloated if you create a separate file for every widget. So
but maybe then it's more consistent throughout your whole code base, so in that case it's also maybe
it might be, definitely.
okay. Cool. The sub-packages, when do you start using them? As I listen now to your presentation, I would expect for every stream maybe you start to use one sub-package, or
You can actually organize it the way you want. I mostly tend to go with a feature-first approach, which will then bundle everything of that feature, and then actually only expose what should be used by other features in the barrel files. But you could also use this differently. Also, this way of using barrel files and sub-packages also allows you to work in a nested way as well. So you can go quite deep with that and reference, export stuff from other barrel files in there as well. All right, thank you.
All right, let's go. So, welcome everyone. I'm Daniel from THEO. I'm working here as a mobile team lead and also responsible for the Flutter SDKs. And yeah, most of the cases I always work on something. So if you're interested on my side project, side journey, you can find my small organization called TheO on LinkedIn, and you can follow all the magic that's happening there. A little bit about THEO technologies. Yeah, you will hear about the Flutter SDK today that we are building, and that's also part of our goal, because we would like to empower our customers to have online streaming experiences really easily brought to their customers. We try to focus on developer experience and build something that's really easy to use. You just drag and drop. You have similar APIs on all the platforms, and you can go to market pretty fast. And then, yeah, you can see Adobe logo up there. It's just a fresh in the news. I think it happened a few months ago that we were acquired by Dolby Digital. So THEO is part of the Dolby Laboratories group now. If you would like to follow our journey and you want to hear more technical stuff from us, we do at least twice per year a THEOCon meetup, where we share our experiences, what we work with day to day. So if you're interested, you can join to the meetup group from the link. All right. So for the Flutter SDK, why we started to build the Flutter SDK, it's basically we checked what's there on the market, and then we realized that the current offerings are not really complete. So if you want to do streaming video online, then it's still difficult. There is a video player package, for example, from Google themselves, the Flutter package. There, for example, you cannot play streaming video on the web, but only MP4. Maybe nowadays they try to change it, but at the time when we started to build the Flutter SDK, that was an issue. There are other packages which are way more advanced, but they don't support web, for example, or they don't support some certain features on iOS or Android. So we decided to let's bring our THEO packages, THEO SDKs. We have an Android, iOS, and Web SDK, and many more, but mainly these three, which are really good and they provide seamless player experience. We decided to bring this to the market under a Flutter umbrella, basically, so customers can build an app pretty fast. They just use one single code base, and the outcome is 3 platforms, 3 applications immediately on web, iOS, and Android. I will talk about a bit the current architecture of the SDK, so you will see some code, how it's implemented, and I will also talk about limitations and issues we face during development. And then it could be something useful for you when you start bridging different SDKs, different native platform code into Flutter, because we suffered a lot with some things. So the Flutter SDK itself provides a THEO player component, what you can see on the right, where basically the customer just drops that component into their application, and under the hood we start initializing our own logic, and it creates a THEO player view, which is an abstraction around web, Android, and iOS, and those underlying views will just pull in the Web SDK, the Android SDK, and the iOS SDK natively from Cocoa Pods, Maven, and NPM. How usually works bridging these 3 SDKs for Flutter, it's through platform interfaces. You can also do it without platform interfaces, but then you will have all the if-else's in your code, that if iOS do this, if Android do that, and then if web do something else. If you use platform interfaces, then you can hide this logic behind one single API, and then from the moment you build the SDK for a certain platform, it will just resolve to the right one, so you don't have to have all the if-else's around platforms checks. So this is an example how THEO player gets initialized under the hood. Basically, we have an abstract THEO player platform class where we provide 2 methods: the initialize, which needed for some asynchronous operation, but the most important part is the build view that will really build the native equivalent for the Flutter view. After you define your interfaces or your abstract layer, you can go platform specific. So this is an iOS example where you can see that the initialize view will do nothing because it's not needed, and the build view method will build the iOS specific UI kit view, which will which will pull in the native iOS THEO player, basically. And what you see there is the important part is the view type, because that's the identifier that the native code will use to know that, okay, I have to make a THEO player view. The rest is just the configuration. So that was the Flutter side. In the native side, in Swift, basically you will see also a THEO player plugin, which makes sure that the THEO player native views getting initialized. So you can see at the bottom of the first screenshot that we register a THEO player native view factory for the same identifier that we used in Flutter. So from the moment you create a UI kit view in Flutter, that will under the hood call into this plugin, and then the THEO player view factory will just create the native THEO player. And then this is just a screenshot for for the view factory, which, as you see, always every time that gets called, then it creates a new THEO player view. And in your application, this is obviously just called once at the time that you create one THEO player. So how you can use this? So after you have all the abstraction, you built out your native views, then when you have to use the widget itself, you can just call THEO player platform.instance and then the methods which are available, the abstract methods, the initialize and the build view, and these will build the under the hood calls for web, iOS and Android. And then from this moment, whoever imports this view in their view hierarchy, they will get the relevant THEO player relevant to the platform. So how it all comes together. So from the moment you build up all these abstractions, it's suggested to structure your package in a similar fashion. So Flutter THEO Player SDK is basically the main package that contains the public APIs. So customers will interact with that one. The SDK, Android, iOS, and web, those are containing the platform-specific code, and the platform interface has the abstraction and the common methods. So basically the import chain is that you have a platform interface that gets pulled by the SDK, web, iOS, and Android, and those three gets pulled by the THEO Player public package. And then once you have these structures, then basically in your main package YAML file, when you build a plugin like THEO Player, then you have to specify for the platforms that your plugin will use that please take the Android part from the Android package, the iOS part from the iOS package, and the web from the web package. And within each of those packages in your package YAML file, you have to say that which class is your entry point. And from this moment, the framework knows that I have to call into that class, and that class gets registered. But I would like to also talk about a bit what native views we use, because Flutter provides you platform views to access underlying code. So on the web, there is only one choice, is the HTML element view, basically where you can wrap your HTML element and you are good to go. On iOS, we use the UI kit view. That's a platform view, and that has really great performance. It runs everything pretty smooth, supports DRM, so you don't have any issues. There is also another way that you can use a texture, where you can ask your native iOS code to directly draw to a Flutter texture. That's an option, but it's not necessary. However, on Android, you can see that you have multiple ways to render a native view component. So you have Flutter's virtual display, hybrid composition, texture layout, hybrid composition, and the texture. If you get the slides, you can click on the Android link, and then you will see all the descriptions of these things. All of them has issues, so you have to pick carefully which one you want. Initially, we started to go with the hybrid composition because that was a platform view that worked pretty well with surface views, because THEO Player renders a video in a surface, and that was the one that could do it way better, but that had performance issues on lower end devices. Then you started to go to the texture layout hybrid composition, and that didn't work on other platforms. Sometimes it showed black screen, didn't support animations well. So at the end, we had to end up with the texture itself, where you can basically, we implemented a new API in THEO Player Android, where you can say that instead of THEO Player building the view itself and start drawing, you can provide a surface to THEO Player, and then that will do the rendering. And in this case, you can provide a Flutter texture into THEO Player, and it will directly draw there from the native side. So where are we today with our SDK? What we support, what we don't, what are the limitations? We support Android TV, iOS, and the web. We cannot support tvOS because it's just not supported by the framework itself. There is a custom fork available where you can try to compile to tvOS. I haven't tried it yet. I heard it works pretty well, but you just have to make sure that the gesture navigation and the other stuff is working. So that's something If it works, then you have it for free, basically a tvOS integration. The other interesting story is smart TVs, because in theory we can cover all the smart TVs with our web SDK. So if you compile Flutter for web and you put it on a smart TV, it should work. However, that smart TVs has different WebView versions. So let's say a Tizen 4 TV or a WebOS 4, it's not the same Chromium version that a Tizen 6 or whatever versions are there nowadays using. And unfortunately, Flutter, the SDK itself, they don't support lower Chromium versions. So you can still compile the SDK, it's not a problem, but from the moment you put it on the TV, you can see some weird things that, I don't know, this browser API is not there, then you have to polyfill it. Then, the way how you do a for each, that's not supported in the JavaScript engine, you have to do another kind of for each and stuff like that. If you have the latest, greatest smart TV, you can just drop a Flutter web app on it and then it will work without any problem. If you go lower on the support, then yeah, you start to suffer, and then you have to decide when to stop, basically. There are also custom SDKs available, especially for the Tizen TVs. The idea is similar as the TVOS custom fork for Flutter. So you can, basically these Flutter modules use the native Tizen code, but that also means we cannot use THEO Player Web, because THEO Player Web is not using the underlying native components of Tizen. And those are also not really stable as far as I know. And then LG also started to support recently Flutter. They start building packages. That's something could be still interesting, but we haven't looked into it. So yeah, that's where we are today. And yeah, you have to keep in mind that Flutter has the support matrix where they have currently supported versions and they have best effort supported platform versions, and that number is growing. So you have to drop at some point certain platforms, because I think they stopped supporting iOS 12, for example, recently. Meanwhile, in the previous version, it was okay. Things like that. So you have to monitor that page, and then you have to know what you can support, and then what your customers can support if they use the SDK. So some challenges we faced during development. I think one of them, some of them are small things, but the other ones are pretty interesting and breaking changes. So yeah, you have to deal with the situation that what if your customers are using a different Flutter SDK version? It can be that in our package file we specify what is the minimum, but it doesn't mean they will use the minimum. They maybe use a newer one that already broke some other APIs. Then you have to work around it, or you have to tell them that please decrease your Flutter version if you can. So right now we keep it in the low level, so we are still good. We don't do any Flutter specific version checks, but it's not something we will not do in the future if issues happen. We have to see. The other interesting thing is that if you have, as I mentioned, new Flutter versions, they can break things. So we wanted to release the Flutter SDK 1.0. I don't know when was it, a few months ago. And on the release day, Flutter released the new, 3.19 or whatever was the version at that time, and it completely broke the web implementation. So we had to rewrite the whole thing. The reason why you also see a lot of Android platform views, all those types, like the hybrid composition and the others, because all of them has quirks, and Google is trying to fix them here and there. There was also a period when they broke the hybrid composition, so you couldn't use it. You had to use a lower Flutter version to compile, and then it worked, or you had to wait for the next one to get it fixed. These are things that you have to keep in mind, and if you can, then implement CDCI that can test these things. So for example, we have CDCI on GitHub, and that can run the web, Android, and the iOS tests for free. And there, for example, what we do that we pull the latest Flutter version, we run all the tests with that, and we also run the beta. So you can run them in a matrix, and then you can test against it. Also, having a decent testing requires effort because you can test on all the different levels. You can just test your Flutter code. With unit tests, you can test the whole integration, but then you still have the native side within the Flutter package. You can also put tests there. So we decided to not do the native tests yet, because anyway we test our native SDKs on our internal pipelines. But yeah, you never know when your integration gets broken, so it would make sense to start building tests there. Also, some random things we saw is inconsistency between different platforms. So I don't know if you have used Pigeon on Flutter. It's basically you can just define an interface and it will generate you platform-specific code. And then, yeah, based on the interface, you will have a Swift code, an Android code, a Java code, or a Kotlin code. And then, yeah, the contract is basically the same between all the platforms. They don't support it for web, for example. So for web, you have to, yeah, some people argue that, yeah, you don't have to use pigeons because it just, yeah, you just write the same code. But to have decent interfaces and you try to keep your contracts, it would make sense to have pigeon support there. The other interesting thing is when you start using pigeons, it made for a single instance communication bridge, basically. So you have to make sure that when you initialize, let's say, multiple THEO players within one view, then, yeah, the messages has to be sent with a certain ID. You need to have the player ID there to understand for, yeah, each player, and then you should parse that ID. Yeah, we fixed this problem in a way that we built an extension on pigeons, so you don't have to do these things, but within the pigeon communication, within the method channel, we already prefix the things, and then it arrives only to the correct THEO player, so you don't have to do an ID check anywhere in your native platforms. The other interesting thing there that if you use the web APIs, some of them are just not available. If you start using, like, I don't know, request full screen API or request picture-in-picture API in the Flutter code, the API is just not there. So you have to see, okay, is it just because they didn't put it there, or something is broken, or can I just put it into an extension and it will work? And then if it's not working, why it doesn't work? Sometimes you have to find the balance, what to use and what not to use. Sometimes you can just call as it is. Sometimes you have to call it in a hacky way. If you look into the source of the SDK, you can see, for example, when we go into picture-in-picture, it's an interesting way of going into picture-in-picture, but that's the only way how it works. So yeah, other issues is, or yeah, it's an issue for us, but it's a good stuff for the customers, that yeah, whenever there is a new Flutter version, if they put something out, people are happily using it, right? Because if there is like a new platform support or a new way of rendering, people just want to use it because they assume it just one click and it will work. For example, for web, you have the canvas rendering or the DOM-based rendering, and now they have the WebAssembly-based rendering. It's usually people just say, okay, I just compile my app with this target, and then everything is fine. But yeah, you have to make sure that under the hood, all the packages basically support it. And then, yeah, if let's say 99% of your current web app supports WebAssembly, but only THEO player is the one that's not working with it, then yeah, you cannot use it, and then you will have a slower web app, for example. So then we have to keep in mind these things. We have to monitor all the changes and try to comply with them. Other example, that the Impeller rendering engine that they use for iOS already for a while, I think it's coming to Android pretty soon. I think it's still in beta, probably. But for that engine, the texture rendering that we used, it's not working anymore. So they introduced a new API. You have to use that one. If Impeller is used, you have to use something else if Impeller is not used, for example. And then other challenges is that, yeah, when people use Flutter, you just expect, things, you just drag and drop, nice widget, and it just works. So we have to invent elegant ways for our customer that you shouldn't tell them that, okay, you drop this one here, but you still have to configure 20 million stuff there. And yeah, by the way, if you need that feature, you have to go to native part of your application, and then Android, you have to still hack this code, hack that code, other stuff. So we try to come up with the best way we can to just support a Flutter level integration, and they don't have to go lower. And then one of the limitations we have also today that you cannot just pull as far as I know, you cannot just pull an npm package into your web application without a lot of hacking around it, and you have to make it like a proper npm project. So right now we always ask the customers that, okay, when you build your web application, somewhere in your index HTML, you have to put the THEO player import there, because that's the only way we can pull it in. We cannot do it automatically. Meanwhile, on Android and iOS, yeah, Gradle and CocoaPods just pulls the package and puts it there without any problem. So what's next for us? It's basically continuing support for more native features. We have it in the underlying SDKs. We try to expose them. That could also mean that we can add features which are not even there in our SDK, because it was more difficult to support in SDK level, but in an app level, it's way easier to support it. And yeah, here basically Flutter acts as an app level for our SDK, so you can do things a bit easier. Then we would like to work towards a plugin architecture. So instead of having everything in one package, we want to give the opportunity to customers to just pull in packages. So if you need the Google IMA or Google Cast integration, it will be not part of a THEO player package, and your package is just growing and growing and growing. But you can just say, okay, I want to import from Flutter, in Flutter, the THEO player base package, and I want to import an IMA extension, and then you just hook them up together, and then it magically works. Yeah, we have to keep up with the new Flutter version, as I mentioned. So CDCI has to run continuously on the latest versions, and we have to keep in mind what new changes are coming and the APIs are getting broken. And yeah, we have to invest more on testing. I think it's in the generic term that you need it. You have a lot of moving components, and to make sure nothing is broken and not the customers will be the first one who notice your issues, you have to invest more in tests. And yeah, if you're interested, the package is available on PubDev, obviously, and you can also check the source. It's full open source, the full package. You can see how we do the platform interfaces, how we hook things together. So if you've never done before, never used platform views in Flutter, I think it's a good starting point to look at. I think that's all. Do you have any questions?
Really nice talk. Do you have an idea on the percentage that is used between Flutter and the native SDKs? So I imagine you will also have SDKs for Android and iOS.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea on how many clients are using the Flutter?
Right now, the number of clients specifically for Flutter is pretty low because it's a recent thing we introduced. So we only have a few right now. I don't know, a number like 3, 5 customers, something like that. But yeah, it's catching up. More people are eager to use Flutter because they see it as a go-to-market solution where they just, okay, one single code base, and then we have an app within days, basically. So it's catching up more and more. Yeah, for the native, obviously, we know our numbers, but yeah, compared to Flutter, there is a big difference. And the other thing what we don't know is who are the customers who built Flutter bridges around our native SDKs, because yeah, the native SDKs are there for a while, right? It's, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. And Flutter is there already when it's getting mainstream. It was like 2, 3 years ago when it started to pick up. At that point, people started to build already bridges. So we have at least one customer who we know that they build their own bridges around THEO player, and they just interact with that native SDK directly from Flutter.
That is VRT.
Yeah. Yes?
How big is the development effort to because I'm thinking you already have the natives from
Mhm.
before. And as not an expert in this area, I think you're probably on the edge of where Flutter is mainstream still.
Mhm.
So are you happy with the results?
Regarding maintenance.
Regarding the maintenance and
Yeah, so
the effort is
I think the effort was rather low we put into this to develop, because it was just 2 people who developed the whole SDK, and it was done, I think, within 2 months probably. Hovig knows maybe better. And for example, we built it in a way that, for example, Hovig never seen Flutter before, and yeah, the platform itself, the developer environment is pretty nice. The user experience is developer experience is pretty nice, so we can iterate fast and we can do things. We also try to build automations around breaking changes. So we try to build, like, if there's a new native SDK released, we try to trigger the Flutter builds and make sure that things are not broken. And yeah, also from the development side, the native SDKs will only break APIs for major versions. So we know that if I have a THEO player 7 and the 7.5, nothing should be broken. And then, yeah, for those breaking changes we prepare, right? So we know that, I don't know, in January we will release a THEO player 9, for example. Then everyone within engineering is in sync what we have to do. And usually that just means you have to call another constructor or you have to call another API. So right now it's not a big effort to maintain it. Yes?
Is this just a client-side implementation, or is there a server-side component to THEO Player?
Yeah, so THEO Player is client-side only, so you can put any stream into it and then we will play it. The server-side components is for our other products now. We have THEO Live, which is a live streaming product where you can, right now we are pushing streams to YouTube, right, and you can watch it live. We also have a product that's similar to this, it's just a lower latency. There you have a server-side component, and also for that we have another SDK that we will try to merge into THEO Player SDK later this year. So yeah, right now, if you have a license, because THEO Player is a commercial video player, so from the moment you have a license, you can drop it into any application and you can play videos. Yes?
I'm not sure if you have a React Native SDK.
Yes.
Do you have an idea what the difference was in development costs, or if there were different caveats in React Native rather than in Flutter?
Usually we have issues with the React Native SDK from the moment you start moving views around. So just building a similar experience that we have in Flutter, for example, that you just bridge the native SDKs, that wasn't a problem. Issues will appear when you, for example, try to go to full screen, because the native SDKs has their own full screen implementation. So they, I don't know, present a new view controller, for example, or a new activity that's full screen. But if you do that in Flutter, then you will lose all of your UI, because it's just a new activity, right? And you are out of the Flutter context, basically. So then you have to implement your own version of these things. Also going into picture-in-picture, you have to make sure that your Flutter activity will go into picture-in-picture, not something new that you launch and then that moves into pip. So those where the difficulties are coming. And from the moment your product becomes big, so React Native is already there for a year or more, the React Native SDK. So there we started to add more integrations on top of it and extensions. There you can see sometimes issues that we forget to update this connector or that integration. There you have a bit more cost to maintain. All right. Yes?
Yes, so you mentioned a lot about native views. What actually of the player is rendered by Flutter and what is native? Like, I can imagine subtitles maybe, are they rendered by Flutter, or is it the platform view or the buttons to start playing?
Yes, so if you use the the hybrid composition, for example, that's basically the view rendered in native, and then that surface is passed through, basically, or you see through to that surface, basically. Then it's rendered by the native SDK. If you use the texture way of rendering, then you don't get the subtitles. In that case, yeah, we have text track API on the native player. So every time there is a new text track, add it to your track, a queue added to your track, or it's appearing or disappearing, then we can pass those informations to Flutter. So then based on that event happening, you can just render it in Flutter yourself.
I think in general you maybe want to keep most of the logic and most of the UI on the native side because you'll always need to support the native SDKs as well, probably.
Yeah, yes and no. Because if you have customers who just happy with what you have in the native, then it's fine. But most of the customers, they want their own UI, right? They want their own stuff. And then in that case, they want to build that UI once in Flutter. So they don't want to go to iOS and then, okay, I have to build some UI views there. And on Android, I have to put some other composable things here and there. It depends on the customers, but right now, the approach we took is the underlying THEO player SDKs, or the views that we show. Those are, yeah, we call them chromeless. So it's just a black box, and then the video appears there. And you have to build your own UI in Flutter. So we have some examples to show them how to build a UI, and then later this year we even we have a component called Open Video UI, which is an open source THEO player UI. You can just pull the package and then you can drop it on top of your Android THEO player or on a web THEO player. We want to re-implement that one also in Flutter, so people have the way of having a default UI and they can still customize it or just reuse some of the UI elements for their own code.
And maybe the last question.
Yeah.
If I want to use this, is it just free to use, or is there a license model? Or
Yeah. So if you just use the example app, which is in the project itself, then you can play streams which are hosted on THEO Player CDN. So that's something we can play for free, basically, or if it's coming from localhost. But if you want to serve your sources from your own server, then you have to buy a license. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Alright. Chris, dat lukt? Ja. Alright. Ready, Jens? Okay. Good to be back. It's been a while since I gave a talk. So I thought, what have I been doing since the last talk? And yeah, it's been 1.5 years already, or 1 year, I think. And yeah, so basically for the people who don't know me, because yeah, half of you are new to the Flutter Meetup. So my name is Koen van Leuven. I'm a freelance developer since one and 3 months now already. I focus mainly on Flutter projects. I organize the Flutter Belgium Meetups like these as well, and I'm a Webflow and server-pod enthusiast. What does that mean? I do Webflow project as well for clients, and in my spare time I do some server-pod projects for my own use. So maybe my next talk will be about that. So join me there. So yeah, what I've been doing since my last talk is basically improving my workflow for my freelance projects. And improving your workflow for me personally is automation. And yeah, trying to find a way to improve certain parts of your daily tasks and making sure that everything you're doing is streamlined and all your projects are kept in the same way to publish to the store and all kinds of tasks that you do on a daily basis. So what we'll be talking about today, so basically what is a CLI, why do you need a custom one, and why you should write it in Dart. And then I will give 2 demos. I've prepared them yesterday. Basically I started yesterday on my talk. So let's see how it goes. And then, yeah, of course, when should you not use a custom CLI, or are there reasons not to use one? So what is a CLI? I think everyone here already knows what a CLI is. It's a command line interface, and it can be interactive. For example, Flutter and Dart are both CLIs. I think everyone has done the following command to debug your Flutter environment or your dev environment. Flutter doctor-v, and it will print out what happened or what is installed on your local machine. So basically that is a CLI. It just runs in your terminal, and you can execute commands without a user interface. So why do you need a custom CLI? I think it's basically to simplify tasks. You don't want to remember 10 API calls that you need to do to pull down all your translations, for example. You just want a simple command that does everything for you. And as Romain already said previously, he can now build from a CLI a project in 20 minutes, which is simplifying tasks and making your life a lot easier. So why would you use this indeed, simplifying tasks? And I would say, if you're a Flutter developer, also write your CLI in Dart. It's less context switching, so you're staying with the same programming language. I've seen projects where we're doing a Flutter project, but all the scripts are written in Bash. All the scripts are written in JavaScript, and you're constantly switching between programming languages, which is not really beneficial for your productivity. So you would say, okay, a custom CLI for mobile development, but we already have Fastlane. So Fastlane is already basically a CLI that you can use, you can call. So why do we need a custom CLI? And I would say that Fastlane is not Fastlane, but Fastpain. And I will explain you why. I think everyone who laughed will know what I mean. So The main reason for me is that it uses Ruby in the first place. It's another programming language that you don't use at all when doing Flutter. You need to make sure that you install it correctly through gem or brew, especially if you also use Cocoa Pods. If you install Cocoa Pods with brew and Fastlane with gem, then they don't know both of them exist. So it's quite hard to figure out where the issues are. Actually, every time I install or I bought a new PC or I did a clean install of my PC and I needed to install Fastlane to build my projects, I always had the same issue where Cocoa Pods could not be found, and it was always something that I had to search a couple hours for, and then your day is ruined, of course, because you want to do productive stuff. So mainly development environment issues is something real when you're using Fastlane. Of course, Fastlane comes with a lot of benefits. You can easily push to the store with, I think, 3 lines of code. You can easily build your project with 2 lines of code. Check if you're on a CI with 1 line of code. So Fastlane has advantages to go to market fast. The question is, do you want to have problems in the long run with dependency issues, with dev environment issues, or other issues along the line? So, because I've used Fastlane, I think for 6 years in the company I worked for previously, I said I don't want to do this for my clients, and I don't want to be having these issues when I need to work for other features or projects. I started with a custom CLI written in Dart, and the question is indeed, why should you write it in Dart? I said it before, you only want one programming language if you're using Flutter. You can just write it in Dart. There's no context switching, and a really big one is that you can compile it ahead of time. That means that you can just get an executable that you can save in your on your PC anywhere, and you can just run it without the Dart engine or without the Dart installation. So you can just run the scripts, or in fact that's a program at that point that is compiled and runs on itself without any dependencies anymore. So everything is already compiled in that one single package. If you run that specific program, you could also give it to a project manager who can update translations, for example, for a project, which is easy without having to install the whole Dart SDK, because indeed it runs everywhere. And because you're using Dart, you don't have dependency issues because you're already using it on your day-to-day projects and your day-to-day feature that you need to implement. So the question is now, how do you need to write one? I've listed 3 packages I would really recommend. The first and maybe the biggest one is args. So args is basically a package that parses all your arguments for you and says, okay, this is the command that should be run, or that you should run now. It also provides you with a help function. Out of the box, a lot of documentation can be added quite easily, and I will show you how you need to do it as well. Then CLI spin is one that I use for showing that the CLI is doing something. You don't want a line that does nothing, and you're not sure if something is happening, if something fails, or if just something hangs. So, or your thread is hanging, for example. So the CLI spin is basically a loading indicator for your CLI, which makes it quite easy to say, okay, this command or this line failed, and it will just replace the loading indicator with a failed state or with a success state, for example. The only issue with that is that it hasn't been updated since 11 months. I don't think it's a really big issue because it's a quite small package. You can just easily forget and fix issues along the line. but I think right now it's not yet updated to support the latest Flutter version. So for me, I've currently forked it to support that. And then the last one that I would also recommend is the CLI completion, which just completes your CLI commands and say, okay, this is what you could type, so you don't need the help function. Other ones are, for example, the code builder, which makes it easy to generate a code directly from your CLI, where you can just say, okay, I want a class with a body, with a constructor. The constructor also should have a body. I want 3 methods, all with parameters, bodies, return types, which makes it quite easy to generate files in your CLI when you're, for example, creating or doing something similar like Mason, for example, or generating Dart files for your translations, which is something I'm doing as well. So Code Builder is also one that I would recommend. So, okay, let's see how that actually works in reality. I've prepared 2 demos. One to show how you should actually start with building a CLI. So you could. So for example, if we look at the Flutter create command, you can always ask for help. Because I forgot what it actually was. So you can start, for example, a project that is a package, a module, an app, but you can also, this is Flutter, so Dart create template console, and this will generate a basic console application for you, and that would look basically like this. So you will get, of course, a pub spec, analysis options, and then a lib folder and a bin folder. And the bin folder will basically just call the file that is located here. I have already implemented some stuff to show how you can use the RX package, for example. So why do you want to have a bin folder and a lib folder? When you're running your Dart package with Dart run, it will always run the bin folder for you with the same name of your package. And then it will look for the main file, and then of course it will run the code that you've written. So why do I still use the lib folder then and not just write everything in my bin folder? Is basically because sometimes I want to create scripts that use certain parts of my CLI that I then can expose with my lib folder. As long as the code is in the lib folder, it can be exported. Is this readable even? Is this better? Yes. So let's see. So what I've currently done is the bin folder is just the main function that gets arguments, and then I create a class that is my CLI that needs to run with certain arguments. And I don't want to do parsing here because for me this is just running the application. All the business logic should be in the lib and then exposed properly, like Frey already showed with the sub packages or something else, or separate packages. So indeed, what have I done in my lib folder? I expose what I want to expose to the outside world. And as you can see here, I also expose the code builder. So this makes sure that I always have a code builder dependency in other projects. So for example, if I run a script or want to create a script somewhere and I need code builder only for that certain script, if I also have the CLI in my dev dependencies, it will also have the code builder dependency already. So that makes it easier, and if you're not using other dependencies, it's quite easy to use. But of course, it's not needed. I feel like in my case, I don't use code builder anywhere other than scripts. So for me, I just expose that by default. Then if you look at the CLI, what I've done, so this is basically the function that is executed from inside the bin folder. So the command runner is a class that is exported out of the args package. And here you're just saying, okay, what is my CLI about? So my CLI is called FB CLI, so Flutter Belgium CLI. And I gave it a description that the CLI just replaces Fastlane to simplify CI/CD processes. And I added just one Play Store command to upload APKs to the Play Store in a very easy and simple way. Of course, if you want to use this certain command, you need to add it to your command runner, because your command runner will parse all the arguments and will tell you, okay, this argument was passed, so this command should run with these arguments. Okay, so I add all my commands. If I have other commands, I just add them here. They're all just added to the runner. And then you say, okay, runner, just run with these arguments. And if you pass the right arguments, you will end up in the Play Store command here. So what you can see here is basically you extend a command, which is again a class that is exported from the args package. In the constructor of your command, you just say, okay, these are all my options. If the command needs to be parsed, this is what is required, or these are the options that are available. And this will also be used to show the help method, or the help, what's it called, the help menu, for example. So for this command, I just say, okay, I need a path where my APK file is. Do I want to generate a changelog, yes or no? And is my APK an actual APK, or is it an AAB file? Then you also need to specify what is your command name. So in this case, I just chose Play Store. So in this case, we will have FB_CLI Play Store, and then the options that are passed here. And then again, the description that we have just for the help function. And then if all the arguments are parsed correctly, we will get in this function, and we can start fetching the arguments results and check if the path was there, if the changelog was there. And then I call a certain plugin. Now, the plugin specifically is not something you need to do or require to do, but I will show you later why I set it up like this. For now, let's just say that we're calling publish to publish the actual file. And you can see here that I'm starting a spinner to validate the SDK, and for now, I will move that here. So for now, I just added a delay of 1 second just to show that the spinner is actually doing something. And then a simple flag that can be turned on or turned off, also just quite easy. All of these are added to a logger, and this one is using the CLI spin. So basically what I'm doing is when I start a spinner, I just create a new spinner, and I just, okay, start, then the spinner starts. As long as you're not stopping it, warning it, or failing it, it will just continue. Otherwise, it will just show the failed state, the warned state, or just stop. So quite an easy logger. And now let's see how this actually works. So if I just run my Dart CLI like this, it will just run the, oh, this is wrong. Custom, yes, Dart run bin like this. Then it will fail, because I didn't provide a specific command, and it will also show me out of the box what I could run in this case. So the available commands in this case are Play Store, which I showed you, is coming from the Play Store command, is this name. So okay, let's see. I forgot what I set up. So let's see what the options are. So I just enter Play Store -help, and then it will just show you, okay, these are the options. So the path is mandatory. It's the path to the APK file. And then this is a flag, yes or no. And then you also need to specify a type. So okay, let's see. I need to pass a path. Of course, this path doesn't exist, but just to show that, that something is coming in. Then you see the spinner. And just for demo purposes, I added a warning with a message, then a success for the changelog, and then the upload failed. Also just by showing that the spin is actually failing. So you can just add the flag that I also specified, and then it's just no changelog or changelog, depending on if you want the changelog on or off. And then it will not show the changelog. So quite easy, but I feel like a lot of tasks can be simplified just by creating simple tasks, simple commands that can be chained with each other. And this is quite an easy example. I think, Romain, your CLI will look a lot more complex, I guess. But indeed, for my own purposes, I've created my own CLI. And mine mainly focuses on CI/CD stuff and deploying to the Play Store and the App Store, test flight, etc. So I will show you a demo on how I handle that. So basically, I've created an impactful CLI, which is my company, and I did some fixes yesterday, so that's why there's one. So for me personally, I use scripts and the CLI basically side by side. So I want to make sure that all the projects that I do are always in the same structure. So that's why in each project you would see build APK or build alpha APK or build plot APK, for example. And in the end, it's basically the same or set up the same as I showed for the simple example. Only the one that I've done is a little more complex, a little more setup is required. So what I do is basically say, okay, I want to run my CLI, but I want to access a certain plugin and I want to run this, this, and this. So I don't need to remember all the options that I need to give in the actual CLI. So when I go to a project and I do a small bug fix, I don't want to remember, okay, what were the actual commands that I need to run here. So for me, this works quite well. I just say, okay, I want to run or build my APK. And the first step that needs to happen is do a version bump, and the suffix should be Android. I can also say, okay, it should be Android Alpha, for example. And I want to commit the changes yes or no, or I could even add a flavor here that would be prod or alpha or something else. If that is done, I just receive the build number. So the build number can be used to build the Android APK. And if you look at this, this would, in the end, Flutter. This is the CI/CD plugin, yes. So CI/CD, integrations, Flutter build, plugins, Flutter build. So in the end, this will, for me, run a VM build, a Flutter build, and then Android or iOS, release, the specific flavor, specific main Dart file, obfuscate, yes or no. So basically all the commands that Flutter already provided, I've added to a custom Flutter build plugin so that I can just use it in my own scripts. And it's quite easy for me to update. If Flutter comes out with a new function, I just add it in my general CLI that I use in all my projects. And it can be just an update, a version bump, and everything is available everywhere. In the past, I've used scripts where I do a lot of stuff. Now I just move everything to the CLI directly, so it is available for all the projects that I do. So for me, it's just build Android, don't obfuscate with this build number, and build an APK, and that's it. So let's see if that works. Dart, run, tools, build APK. So you can see, okay, it's first started initializing the CLI, then doing the version bump, then the actual version bump. And if you look, it updated the release config file where I keep the version number that is used. You could also just fetch it from an environment variable from CodeMagic, for example, and that would simplify this step by just fetching your environment variable. In my case, I want to be able to build locally and on the CI. So for me, this works better. But after that, it just runs the Flutter build command without the flavor, so that's why it's null. And then it just successfully builds. So if you look at the build, it is located here, and that is the APK that is released. And I think, let's see, no, not here. So for other projects, let me see. So for other projects, for example, a little bit bigger, I do it like this. I have a config file where I get the one-time passwords IDs. So I don't want to share all my logic or all my credentials. So I want to make sure that all my credentials are safe in 1Password. So I wrote a plugin that just gets my my IDs out of 1Password directly from the CLI. And then I'm able to just download them here. So if you look at the alpha APK, for example, I do a version bump, and then I will upload to App Center after everything is done, and it will build to this name, and then will build with this owner name. It will notify listeners and to this distribution groups. So for me, this was initially quite fun side project because I was just playing around with how can I improve some certain tasks, and eventually I just moved everything that I had in Fastlane to a custom CLI. But of course, let's go back to the slides. Of course, there are disadvantages as well to a custom CLI. If you're not ready to do maintenance on these specific custom CLI, I don't think it's for you. It's a little bit maintenance, but it's actually quite alright if you set it up properly in the beginning. If you don't need any custom implementation, you can also just use Fastlane if that's working perfectly for you, or just basic commands that are already baked in Flutter. And if you don't like a fun side project, then I would also not go for a custom CLI. So thanks for your attention. This was my talk. If you have any questions or want to try it out, it's on GitHub and on PubDev, or just shoot. Thanks. Any questions? Yes.
Thanks for the talk, first of all. Do you have any experience with actually building and distributing these CLI tools as well?
I've not done it, but it's basically just Dart. I think it's Dart built or something. It's quite similar to what Flutter is doing, and you just get an exe file for Windows, and then I'm not exactly sure what you get for macOS, but it's just an executable that you get with all your dependencies in it, and you can just run it out of the box. Yes?
Not really a question, but I also just want to share, if you want to automate certain tasks with Dart code, I highly recommend checking out the Dart grinder package.
Right.
Just make sure you type in Dart grinder, not just grinder, because then you end up somewhere else. It's also really helpful. You can define different tasks, and they can depend on each other. So then you can make.
Basically, a little like how Gradle does it, probably.
Yeah.
All right, nice. If you have any other questions, just reach out, and thanks for your attention. Okay, then people who have been here before know what's next.